In a place in the middle of the corn desert, a Midwestern shelter stands constructed of old wood. A stable out back, but not for any livestock, but rather a collection of eerie tales compiled and saved. As we open the double doors to the compound, we select the best in weird, paranormal, and unsettling news. And it all starts right now, live from the Acrylic Ranch.
And yes, it is official. We are live at the Acrylic Ranch. And as always, our friend and druid princess, Jennifer Ann. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, everybody.
It's good to hear you. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Well, good. Glad to hear it. Look, we have a very special guest tonight on the Acrylic Ranch. The topic matter is probably nothing new to at least some of the Acrylic Ranch watchers or listeners. Lon Strickler, who is an author, a blogger. He is the curator of phantomandmonsters.com. Plus, you can find him over at Facebook, Friends Who Like Phantoms and Monsters. He's also a radio show host over at Arcane Radio with Sean and Bruce. And you can find Arcane Radio at arcaneradio.com. Hi, Lon. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
No problem.
We got a lot to cover in a short amount of time, and I feel quite privileged to the fact that there is a straight shot, straight as an arrow, from where the Acrylic Ranch is to where a good portion of these Mothman or flying humanoid sightings have been seen in the city of Chicago. And of course, I've tried a few times going down there and doing some research. But I know that you've been contacted and you've been looking into this a lot, and we're all left with a lot of questions. And I'd like to get, some of your opinions. You and I have not spoken before, but try to get some of your opinions and some of the maybe testimonial accounts that have been verified as to what's been seen in the city of Chicago.
Okay, well, this is a phenomena that I am used to looking into. I mean, this is not something that's just started in Chicago. Of course, people are familiar with the Mothman of Point Pleasant and back in the late 60s. And since that time, there have been similar type of flying humanoids, flying beings seen by hundreds, if not thousands of people over the years. We're still just trying to figure out why, or people are seeing this creature. But these sightings in Chicago, in particular, actually there were 3 sightings back in 2011.
Right.
And that ended fairly abruptly. And there was actually a picture taken of whatever this was. It just looked like a large bat. But this started acting up again in late March of this year and continues to this day. And from me going back and looking into the history of these sightings, these type of sightings, I believe this is probably the most concentrated flap since Point Pleasant.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And I was kind of bowled over when you first started posting this. I'm like, wow, this is a little, close to home. But now with more and more witnesses, and I can kind of understand, too, that, there are a number of witnesses that see it and just don't know what to do with that information. Fortunately, I believe one of these last couples were smart enough to, do a Google search and, came up with your name and ended up calling you. And I don't know what to make of this either. I really don't. You brought up the point about the photograph. What is your take on that? Do you believe that might be all pretty legitimate? I've seen it myself. It's kind of convincing to me personally, but what's your take on it?
That original sighting was received by UFO Clearinghouse Manuel Navarrete runs the website.
Right.
And in fact, he received the earliest report this time around as well. That photograph, that's hard to figure out what it was. It looks so symmetric type. It didn't look like. It didn't, in a way, it didn't look natural, but in another way, it did kind of remind you of just a large bat-like creature. Now, was it a humanoid? I have no idea. The person who took the photograph described it as looking like a sugar glider, because this person was actually from Tasmania, and they commented that it looked like a huge sugar glider from where they originated from. So,
right.
I guess that's probably close to what it looked like, but because of the depth and perception of it, I couldn't really tell how large it was. But the fact that it was seen 3 times, lends credence to that it actually existed.
Right. I kind of did a little bit of research off on my own just to take it outside of an actual humanoid, and I looked up images of flying humanoid kites. Now, there are some kites out there that, are kind of done in the fashion of a dragon, but the way these things moved and the way the witness testimony is, I can't understand how you would be able to fly a kite over such a urban area with so many buildings in the way. I don't know. I'm completely dumbfounded. However, the last time I went down there, which was on Monday night, after you had texted me that there was yet another sighting down there, and I know that Manuel was down there earlier in the day, I ended up following his trail, and I no sooner got to Lakeshore Drive, and a large aquatic bird. Now, its wingspan was probably, I would guess, about 4 feet, and I'm just being conservative. But it flew in front of the car, but probably maybe 30 feet above Lakeshore Drive, and it landed in a tree, but it kept its wings open. And so I had shared the picture with Jennifer, and she kind of agreed, yeah, the wings, even though they're feathered, they kind of are shaped a little bit like a bat. But it's clearly a bird. I can't see that people would be confusing a bird with a flying humanoid, and these birds have been here a lot longer than these flying humanoid sightings. So I'm stuck like you are as to what actually is happening. I don't know.
Well, the most impressive aspects of some of these sightings, or all these sightings, in fact, are they so closely resemble each other.
Right.
Though recently they've been described as a huge black bat-like creature, 6 to 8 foot long, with membrane-type wings, no feathers. The last report said it had a distinguishable head on it. It looked human, but it was much thinner. It formed to a point at the backside. Didn't see any legs, but they could have been tucked under.
Right.
The earliest sighting that was near Midway International, I hadn't heard anything from the fact that anybody's seeing anything on radar. That's another thing. I mean, this is so interesting that it was definitely in the airspace of the airport.
Right.
And, I'm just wondering if this was something that only a few people can see. The gentleman who had that sighting in Cicero said that has had a lot of medical problems since that sighting.
Yeah.
It has something to do with his eyes, the optic nerve, and such. He's had a few things happen with his family that have been sudden. So, I don't know. I mean, there are a few things that I have learned in the past several days that may have some connection. So I haven't written about it, but you're going to get exclusive on it.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, we're looking forward to that.
First of all, there have been a lot of sightings in the Chicago area, most notably south of Chicago, of bright flashes in the sky at night.
Uh-huh.
In fact, there was 2 down in Chicago Heights, one just south of Calumet Park, and I believe there may have been another, though it was just like a third-person account. But the people are seeing these sudden flashes of light. Now, I have dealt with sightings before that may have involved some type of portal opening or doorway opening, and this flash of light phenomena seems to be apparent in most of those. Now, I don't know if there's a connection somehow.
Right.
So, keep that in mind. I am keeping an eye out on UFO activity in the Chicago area, and even as far as out in the lake and north into Wisconsin.
Right.
Quite honestly, the overall UFO reports coming in from the area have actually waned somewhat.
Uh-huh.
There is usually a fairly steady number of UFO reports in and around Lake Michigan, and that's not been as high as it usually has been.
Right.
My partner Butch has been looking into that, and he and I agreed the other night that we were talking about it, and the sightings, the UFO sightings, have really dropped. Why that is,
right.
I don't know.
Right.
Now, another aspect, something else that I came up with. Well, I'm really hesitant in a way about talking about this, but I have talked to 2 psychics. Both are fairly well known.
Yeah, well, I know one of them. We're friends.
And I have been told that they have sensed something to do with collapsed bridges. Now, I had made a prediction at the beginning of the year. I had a vision of a collapsed bridge, a major collapse of a bridge somewhere in the United States. Now, I couldn't pinpoint where it was, but I did state that. I have it on the website. And the interesting thing is this one psychic sought me out. I didn't, and they told me about this.
Was there any kind of information as to what type of bridge, or just a bridge? Was it a suspension bridge, or we haven't gotten that specific, but she did tell me that she saw collapse of buildings and bridges. Wow.
Now, I'm not saying specifically that it's going to happen in Chicago or any other specific area, but it's just concerning to me that I've been hearing this now. I hesitate to really say a whole lot about that, but with the nature of these type of flying humanoids and the harbinger of doom tag that comes along with it, it just makes you wonder.
Well, sure it does. I could say, with a degree of accuracy, most of the bridges in the city limits of Chicago are relatively short spans because they just span the Chicago River. However, there is the Skyway Bridge, which is a pretty high altitude bridge, and it goes for quite a span from Chicago into Indiana. And it's a tollway bridge, and that's the largest bridge in the area. Until you get west to the Mississippi, to cross the Mississippi, that is the next biggest bridge. I'm only throwing it out there. I'm not saying, hey, that's what's going to happen, or a doomsday sayer myself. But all the other bridges in the city of Chicago, like I said, have relatively short spans, and a lot of them are the like the lift bridges where they split in half and open up to let the sailboats out to the lake.
Right.
So, those are mechanical bridges without a whole lot of suspension. I don't know what integrity would create something like that to collapse. God forbid that happened. But then you're talking maybe the 18 to 20 cars on the bridge at rush hour so yeah, like you, I don't want to speculate either, but it made me think about what are the bridge connections in the city of Chicago. That's it. I mean, really, that is it, is the Chicago Skyway. And there is an industrial, there's a lot of barges that go through there, so there's a lot of industry in that area where the Chicago Skyway goes into Indiana. So it's quite possible that maybe that's what the vision was. I don't know.
Well, there have been 3 settings not that far away from that area too. So
right, exactly.
So it makes you kind of think if that's what you're thinking. I mean, I really didn't. I really didn't know anything. I'm not really familiar with the Chicago area. Though I am getting much more familiar with it.
I'll try to help you out.
Yeah. So.
Well, Jennifer and myself, we were looking at the map, and Jennifer picked it up and ran with it and started coming up with what does she see in the sightings map. And we'll post that up at the Acrylic I saw that you posted up the most recent sightings map. So we started correlating lines. Well, Jennifer went ahead and did this and came up with the triangle patterns and the dates. Now, there is some symmetry between the dates of these sightings. Now, again, how many people have seen something but haven't reported it? It doesn't mean every time something is seen, it gets reported. So you're trying to fill in, these empty spaces and try to build a pattern. But, she was very profound in telling me that it seems that the Cranberry Slough area, which I did, a Google satellite overview, it's a heavy vegetation area. There's very little traffic through there. Is it possible that, this entity may be coming out every 8 days or so to do whatever it is it does and then seek itself back to that Cranberry Bog area? It's a wonderful theory, and there's quite a bit of possibility because it is a central point to where all these sightings have been seen. But I'm also kind of taken back too as to how many times the witnesses have seen this in the traveling direction heading east out over Lake Michigan. So,
right.
And again with the one witness testimony saying that they saw a green orb out over the lake, we're going right back down that road again. So I don't know. This is fascinating. I myself personally have had 5 UFO sightings since I was a child. I've lived here my whole life. Or I should say I've grown up here. I have lived in a few other places, but not for a extended period of time. But, 5 times in my life I have seen very significant UFO sightings. I did nothing with it. I just kept it to myself. It was my own personal experience. I didn't report it to any, MUFON or anything, and which I'm kind of glad I haven't. But 2 years ago was the last sighting here. Now, you asked me a question about, is there a history of earthquakes?
Right.
My ex and myself were sitting on the front porch one night. We were sitting on the love seat on the front porch, and I happened to see 2 red orbs off in the distance, about 7 miles out, moving in what seemed a very controlled, and this is the first time I've seen it. I've heard about them, but I've never seen it. But the 2 of us were fascinated, and I did drive out to the car, or I got in the car and drove out there. It was in the area that an earthquake happened the following night. Now, it was less than 1 on the Richter scale, but it was enough to wake us up and shake everything in the house. And so when you asked me that question, I'm like, maybe that's a good question. Maybe that's an earthquake is going to weaken something and cause its integrity. I'm sorry, Lon. I wish I had more answers.
Yeah, it's no, really. I agree with you. This what they call earth light phenomena before an earthquake, It's quite common out in California.
Right.
And it has been seen in a lot of other places, in particular down in Peru and Chile. Some of the major quakes have had this phenomena happen hours up to a day ahead of time. So the fact that you saw that before a quake, and maybe others have seen it as well, this may be an explanation for maybe a few orbs that have been seen here and there.
Right.
I don't know. It is a good theory. That's why I was interested, because I had talked to a couple these people before, these psychics, and this earthquake theory does come into play.
Right.
So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the geological makeup is of Chicago. I know further south into Illinois, there has been activity, and is it related to the Madrid?
Yes. The Madrid fault line, right. The Madrid fault line is the largest fault line in the Western Hemisphere. It's not the most active, but it is the largest. And in the late 1800s, it actually, when the quake happened there, it actually changed the course of the Ohio River. And it's what actually now forms what, the tip of Illinois looks like. And it seriously, it wiped out, hundreds of thousands of people, and it was a major quake, and I'm sure it was felt up here in Chicago. However, there are no major fault lines here, but there are fault lines, just it's very minor when they do happen. My whole life of living here.
I was also thinking about another phenomenon that's been going on up in the Great Lakes area, and it's these hums, these loud hums. Yes. In particular, in the Detroit area, this phenomenon has occurred. Windsor, Canada. I was going to ask you tonight if you have heard any of that.
I have
reports similar to that in the Chicago area.
Well, I have experienced the hum myself, and I never heard of the hum before, and it was driving me crazy because I would only hear it when I'd go to bed. And, clearly everything is, turned off. The lights are off. There's no audio on in the house. And I'm hearing this hum, and it's maddening, actually, because the more you hear it, the more you're focused on it. And it would last about a week, and then I wouldn't hear it anymore. And then within the last month, Jennifer out in Oregon actually was able to record it on her phone. And was picking up the hum, and I'm like, son of a gun. Well, then I started, maybe I would say 6 months ago, I started researching it, and I actually did an Acrylic bit on the hum in Manchester, England, where it is still ongoing to this day. And actually somebody from Manchester responded back to me saying, yes, it's maddening. Not everybody hears it, but everybody's hearing is, it hears at different hertz and so on. Okay, that's understandable, but there are some of us that do hear it. So I'm finding that fascinating too. What's causing these hums? And yes, I have heard reports of Michigan, that they're having it in Michigan. I've had it here. Now, mind you, the Acrylic is not in the downtown Chicago area, but I'm not that far from there. And if I'm picking it up here, I'm sure I'm not the only one that was hearing it.
Well, and this kind of ties into these flying humanoid sightings. I mean, for an area as large as Chicago and in the metro area itself, you would think, even though a lot of people are hesitant about, making reports, you'd think there would be more reports. Is this because just certain people are able to see this thing?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I believe that with other entities. I don't believe everybody has the wiring, the brain wiring, maybe to see shadow people or the Hat Man or... that's my personal belief. I believe that there's only some of us that are perceptive enough to be able to pick up on it and see it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
if I could.
Yes, please.
when it comes to certain entities or experiences, it's also maybe, I don't know, in my opinion, it's less if they are wired, but more of it's if it's supposed to be part of your life experience. Does that make sense?
Sure it does. Sure it does. Yeah.
I do work with a lot of people as far as, I am intuitive, and I do work with hauntings and people that have attachments and such, and I'd say a wide majority of the people that have issues with entities, unknown entities, are people that are actually what we call beacons, or to attract spirit energy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you know, I think that, I think that may have something to tie in with this. I think the people that are seeing this being are somehow attracted to them, or it's attracted to them just for a specific reason. This is another aspect of this that I'm looking into. Do the people that have been making the reports and the locations have a connection somehow?
Wow.
You know, it's interesting that the sightings we have received really, run all along all social and economic levels.
Right.
It's not just, it's a lot of different people, different races, different economic situations.
Right.
It just is. It's just very wide.
Right.
And are you also looking into like their histories a little bit on if they've had anything else happen before in the past, like hauntings or UFO sightings, or?
Yeah, if they're willing to talk about it. But I have found that the people I have talked to and the follow-ups that others have been doing with these witnesses, that they do not have a history of paranormal activity.
Well, that's interesting.
Oh, wow.
The one gentleman in particular does have some paranormal occurrences throughout his family. Now, I'm not saying particularly him, but maybe his family. So, but the other witnesses, there's really no connection as far as paranormal experiences.
Right.
Wow.
Well, I don't know about you, Lon, but, Jennifer and I, we talk on a regular basis, clearly, because we do the Acrylic But I think I made mention to you yesterday, Jen. It seems to me that the answer is right underneath our noses. We just aren't just trying to figure it out, but I think the answer is right here under our nose. I'm looking at the map, I'm looking at the sightings, I'm looking at the testimony, and I'm like, there's something here. There is something here. It's just, how do you put that puzzle together to get the full picture? I think the answer is right underneath our noses. We're just not able to touch it yet.
Right. It's like when I look at the map, it's like I feel like there's something more there that I'm just not seeing, and I'm not, I don't know why.
Right. Well, like I mentioned to Lon earlier, Jen, not every sighting has been reported. At least that's a good possibility that every sighting has not been reported. Therefore, that would be your missing pieces in the pattern, and that's part of having Lon on the show tonight. For those of you that are watching, even if you watch this recorded later, please share this with your friends. Share this episode with your friends. It's not notoriety for the Acrylic It's to get the word out there. And if anybody does watch this and, hey, I've seen that, you can contact Lon. Lon, if you want to give away your contact information, that would be great.
Yeah, you can contact me by phone, 410-241-5974.
Okay.
Or you can contact me by email at lonstrickler@phantomsandmonsters.com.
Wow, very good. Phantoms and Monsters.
I do want to mention there was one report that involved two different entities, two different beings together, And my theory at this point right now is that there are two beings involved with these sightings. I think there was a more traditional Mothman-like, Owlman-like sightings early on.
Right.
And I think that some of the later sightings have been more of a man bat or a huge bat-like humanoid. So I do believe there are two distinct types of beings that are being seen.
Okay. Right. Well, you did mention that to me the other night.
Right.
You know, I want to touch base, you know, for those that haven't heard this yet or maybe have not seen the video. Excuse me. The first night I went down there to just take a look around in some of the witnessed areas, I think I covered by foot at least, you know, probably between 5 and 7 miles of walking down there. When it got to the underpass where one of the witnesses stated that it had come out from underneath a bridge that's holding up Lakeshore Drive along Randolph. So I went to that location. And as I was recording, I'm watching the battery go from 48% and it immediately dropped down to 0. And I'm having video static and audio static, but I didn't know I was having audio static at the time because I couldn't hear what I was recording. But I saw it on the video, and my battery drained to 0. So I had to immediately cut it off and say, you know, thanks for watching, I'll come back, and I'm trying to do it as fast as I can. And I hit send, and that was it. My battery was dead. But while that whole thing was happening, there was an area underneath that bridge that, and I believe I even said it on the video, if I were a Mothman, this would be the place I would hide, because it had wrought iron fence that, and I'm sure it's meant to probably keep homeless out from underneath that bridge, but it has spires at the top of, you know, the fence. Okay, it keeps you from climbing over, but there's still a 4-foot gap between the top of the fence and the bridge itself. And it was pitch black, dark in there. And I'm standing there recording this, and I was creeped out. I had a creepy feeling. I don't know what was bringing that feeling over me. I was just kind of creeped out. Now, granted, I go down there. I'm looking for an entity that I know nothing about where it comes from. So part of that scare factor, I'm, you know, putting into reality to say, maybe that's why I was so creeped out, but I had such a negative feeling when that whole thing was happening. And unfortunately, Jennifer was monitoring me as I was recording it, and she was desperately trying to tell me that there is something there. There is definitely something there. She was picking up on it, and I probably picked up on it just from the creep factor I was having. But then when I got about a mile away from that location, I'm like, well, let me see what my phone's doing, because I had no idea what time it was, and my battery had 25% on it. Now, batteries don't recharge themselves. I don't know. Maybe there was a wireless hotspot that recharges batteries. I don't know. But I found that really strange that it went down to 0, but yet I get a mile out of that area, and now I've got 25% on my battery again. That in itself was enough for me to rethink this whole thing of, maybe it's not, or maybe it is coming from someplace else. And when I mean someplace else, a veil, that it's coming on the other side of that veil. I don't know, but it was an interesting video, and it's posted on the Acrylic if anybody's interested in taking a look at it. I think it's only maybe a minute and a half long, but it's there, and it happened. So I don't know.
Well, you know, I have believed that a lot of cryptid activity is a result of some type of portal or some kind of alternate universe. I even feel that a lot of this otherworldly, non-terrestrial interaction is related as well. You know, of course, it's just a theory. I don't know if it can be proven anyway.
Right.
But I tell you, there are a lot of more people in the paranormal, natural community that are really starting to take a more serious look into the supernatural aspects of cryptids.
Right. Right.
For the fact that, and for the simple fact that they turn up suddenly and they disappear suddenly, and excuse me, we don't know where they reside, where they hide out.
Right.
You know. So.
Well, you know, Lon, seriously, anything's possible, and I don't care what anybody's opinion is. They can roll their eyes and say, "Okay, you're crazy for believing." Well, you know what? Something's happening, so I just leave my mind open and leave all the doors open to anything's possible. Seriously, anything is possible, and I am nobody to say nope, you're wrong, or yeah, you're right. Because as far as I know, Lon, unless you know a secret that none of us know, there's no experts that know. There's
no experts in this. There's definitely not.
No, there's not. Lon, do me a favor once again, for those that are watching, if you have seen something, would you give your contact information again, please?
Sure. It's you can contact me by phone at 410-241-5974, or you can email me at Lon Strickler at phantomsandmonsters.com.
Okay, well, we'll put that up on the Acrylic Ranch page, too.
If you go to the website, phantomsandmonsters.com, there are plenty of links there that you can contact me. I take a report or whatever.
All right, and then would they be able to get hold of you too? Thank you, Jennifer. Jennifer just posted it up here so that people can go ahead and ring in on that. They can contact you at Arcane Radio too, could they not?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Arcaneradio.com. You can get in touch with Butch or Sean or Lon himself over there, and that would be great. Lon, I cannot thank you enough. I really appreciate you stopping by with us tonight and giving us a chit-chat about this weird thing that's going on in Chicago. Of course, I will be, as Sean likes to say, boots on the ground. I will be boots on the ground again. If we find any witnesses or anything of interest, you'll be the first one I will let know, sir. I greatly appreciate you coming with us.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you so much for stopping by.
You all take care now.
Thanks, Lon.
You too.
And, of course, we'll wrap it up here at the Acrylic Ranch. Thank you, Jennifer. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have some wonderful surprises coming up in the future with guests, and we'll be posting that at the Acrylic Ranch page. And we'll be over at the Acrylic Ranch website also. We'll post all that information at Acrylic Ranch. Got some great surprises coming up ahead. So thanks, people. I really appreciate you all watching. I'm sorry if I didn't get to say hi to Dan and to Laura and to Eric and everybody else that showed up. But thank you. It's greatly appreciated. So till next Tuesday, we will talk again real soon. Have a good night.